we do need to talk about this Michigan-Nebraska game a little bit because this was a crazy one, and this was one that had some NCAA tournament, stuff to it that for Nebraska, and if they could possibly get in. And John, I see what you said here. He said this game is 2019 Indiana Purdue levels of bad. Final score 48-46. Pretty close. 49-46 is the end of the game. Michigan takes down Nebraska. Jason, I mean, if you want to talk about a gritty, grinded out game, that's what this game was. It was grinded out, gritty. Vlad Golden gets hit in the face. Yeah, Danny Wolf is holding his head for basically an entire possession one time, and Nebraska's getting beat up. I think Connor Essegian was kind of getting ragdolled there for a little bit. It just that's what the game was, and that's Big Ten basketball for you. What were your thoughts in the game?
Yeah, really physical. Michigan has kind of adapted that physicality, right? They built their team around their bigs with Wolf and Golden, and they're starting to get better play from Gale from the perimeter. But by and large, they've been carried by their big guys, so they're fine. Getting in a cage match. For Nebraska, if you're a Nebraska fan out there, you might be frustrated. You played pretty well. You might be frustrated. I have good news for you. Your schedule is very favorable. You're going to make tournament. So you can be frustrated right now, but the reality is where the bubble is right now and where you're sitting at. You still have Minnesota at home and Iowa at home, a trip to Ohio State, which is to be honest, has been not an intimidating place for visitors this year. They've lost 5 league games at home already. So with that said, if they just take care of business and win Minnesota and Iowa at home, they're going to make tournament.
Yeah, no, I think you're, I agree with you. ESPN has been really high on Nebraska for the past couple weeks now, and I think at one point they kind of had Ohio State and Nebraska right in line with each other, and then after Ohio State had their loss to Northwestern, Nebraska just shot right up. Even
Yeah.
though Nebraska lost that game to Penn State, they still were up ahead of them. But I do want to touch on Michigan a little bit in this game because we talked about the physicality of the Big Ten and stuff like that. I mean, I was somebody that said about this Michigan team early on, I said, they just don't look, as physical as
Yeah.
maybe a Dusty May team I think would look in the out of conference. And so I said, when you get into the Big Ten, that to me is going to be one of the biggest tests of Dusty May, him coaching this team is can he get this team to play physical enough in the Big Ten? And really, other than maybe 1 or 2 games, I'd say the Michigan State game, maybe Michigan State was more physical in that one. And this game was a huge test to see Michigan is a physical team and they are going to be a gritty, grinded out team. They might get knocked in the mouth. They might be, get a rebound over them or something like that, but they're going to respond. And they did in this game when the 3-point shooting wasn't there, when it felt like you had to grind it out, be gritty. Michigan did that. And I think it's just credit to Dusty May, right? How good of a coach he is,
Yeah.
how much he can get his guys to buy in. I mean, Jason, what's your thoughts on this development of this Michigan team? I mean, last year only 8 wins. Obviously, coaching changed and everything, but I mean, to go from 8 wins to now what a possible 4-3 seed for
Yeah.
Michigan? That's just crazy.
Yeah, I think they can get up to a 3. There's probably a path to a 2 seed for Michigan.
Wow.
Right now they're sitting in right about with Wisconsin at the 3 line. If you can take Florida, if you take Florida Atlantic to a Final Four, you can coach, right? I mean, Dusty May is
Hmm.
a phenomenal coach. I wrote about it previously. I thought he was the best hire of the sequence. They tried to get him in Columbus, they couldn't quite get him, and so he had he's very close with Chris Holtman. He had some conversations with Holtman, and I think Chris kind of steered him to the other side of the state line. You could tell early in the season they were trying to find themselves, right? They played Wake Forest, and Wake Forest is not an overly physical team, but Wake Forest was just too much for them early on in the non-conference. They played, Arkansas at Madison Square Garden, and they just weren't ready to go. Like Calipari's team at that time, that was really all Arkansas had on their resume for a long, long time. I think they got beat by Oklahoma soon after that in Charlotte. What happened was right after that, they took a trip out. I took a trip out west to LA. And I think teams can do this. It can go well or it can go sideways. They went out west and they just punched USC and UCLA in the mouth out west. And they spent 5 or 6 days out there together, and boy did they play well. And I think once you go out to UCLA and you play a Mick Cronin team and you can kind of wrestle them down to the mat and win, then you've proved something. Their season changed when they went out there in early January and they started playing really well. Since then, they've only lost 3 league games.
I'm muted. I apologize. We talked about it like to start the Big Ten season with this Michigan team is how they just turn the ball over so much. You
Yeah.
saw it in that Wisconsin game, you saw it in that Oklahoma game, and they're still turning the ball over a good amount, albeit it's not, 17, 18 times a game like they were at times. But this is still a team that is able to recover from those things. And I think it just speaks to how talented and how overall this team is really able to stay in games, use their talent, use Danny Wolf, use Vlad Golden in special ways. I mean, that pair right there is going to win you a lot of games, and it has. I mean, early on, that game against Wisconsin basically won them the game. I felt like was Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden being able to pair up and do what they were able to do in that game. So,
Yeah, I mean, JR, you're
okay.
right. I mean, they're 339th in the country in turnover percentage offensively. I mean, that's atrocious.
Hmm.
Teams that usually do that do not make the tournament. But what they have is they're the sixth best team in the country at 2 point field goal percentage offensively. So what they do is they get the ball down the block and they can score down low. They're shooting high percentage shots because because if they don't get the ball inside and do that, then they turn it over. And so they have to be very, very simple offensively. The ball goes through Golden, it goes down to the block, and they score from there because their guards just don't take care of the ball. Listen, we saw Gale do that last year at times with Ohio State. He was maddening, right? I mean, he's
Hmm.
very skilled, very good offensively, but he can be a bit careless with the ball. And some of their other guards are very, very similar. But when you shoot the ball that well, it can really mask a lot of issues. I will say this: they have to be careful in the tournament, though, right? Tournament, historically, you have to have guards that take care of it. The intensity ramps up. You're going to be playing a lot of really good experienced teams. And you're going to run into issues where late turnovers are going to hurt you. So when you look back at a team, and listen, Michigan's had a great year, but they win a lot of close games because they're very well coached under May. They have to be careful. Their guards have got to take care of the ball a little bit better.
I was going to ask you, can you recall a team that
Hmm.
made a deep, and I'll say Sweet 16 Elite 8 type of run, maybe not the deepest, but a Sweet 16 Elite 8 type of run that turns the ball over at the rate that Michigan does? Like, can you remember a team in recent memory? Because I can't think of a team like that. Obviously, turnover rates, we don't know them off the top of our head, but a team that just continually gave the ball away. I can't think of a team like that was able to make it that far in the NCAA tournament recently.
Yeah, in years past, we kind of grouped kind of programs together. Like Baylor has been very good the last 5 to 6 years, and their turnover rate is higher than you would usually see. It's usually in the
Mm.
180s or the 200s. So Baylor, but they would overcome all of that with athleticism. So Baylor is a good model for them. Michigan doesn't have that kind of athleticism. They're kind of plodding and kind of going inside, but it can be done. It can be done, but you got to make shots, right? They're going to have to grind it out defensively a little bit, but they're going to have to shoot at a higher percentage when they play better teams.
Yeah, in this Nebraska game, they shot 5 of 27 from three in this one. That's not going to get it done. Danny Wolf was their leading 3-point shooter, 2 for 6 in the game. Pretty much everybody else was either 0 for 1 or 2, and 1 for 4, 1 for 5 in this one. So it is impressive to me Michigan was able to grind it out, but yeah, got to be better than that in the tournament for sure.